So we're now on the chapter 6, the topic about business transaction and their analysis. Okay, so for this topic, uh, here are here are the learning objectives. We will be describing the nature and what are the examples of business transactions. We would also identify the different types of business documents we are using on identifying these business transactions, and we would analyze as well the common business transactions using yung pinag-aralan natin last time, the rules of debits and credits. Okay, so in accounting, 'di ba? We have this accounting process, and this accounting process represents the accounting cycle. 'Di ba? Sa accounting process meron tayong process of identifying, process of recording, and a process of communicating. So if we break down that into steps in accounting cycle, here are our steps. Guys, by the way, these steps listed here, we'll be discussing that. Okay? One by one. Let's say for today, okay, for this topic, we'll be discussing the first two, the identifying and analyzing and the journalizing. Okay? So, as I said, the first step in the accounting cycle is identifying and analyzing business transactions, then journalizing, posting, preparation of an adjusted trial balance, then gathering necessary entries for adjusting entries, and that's the time we prepare adjusted trial balance and or an optional step worksheet, and we prepare as well financial statements, and we do the closing entries. We also prepare the post-closing trial balance, and lastly, an optional step as well, we do the reversing entries. Okay, so as I mentioned, we'll be discussing for tonight, or for this topic, the topic about identifying and analyzing business transactions. Same way with the journalizing. Okay, so the first step in accounting cycle is identifying and analyzing business transactions. So, as an accountant, 'di ba? We gather information from these source documents or mga receipts na nare-receive natin. And then kumbaga, on the first step, it involves identifying this business transaction, and we will analyze if these business transactions affect the records of assets or accounts of assets, liabilities, capital, income, or expense. So sa first step natin, ang ginagawa natin, we have the business transactions that we gather. So we identify that and analyze if that affects our accounts of assets, liabilities, capital, revenue, or expense. If that affects these elements, doon natin mako-consider na accountable events. So bakit natin kailangang malaman kung ano ba yung accountable events? So these accountable events ang kailangan nating i-record sa accounting book natin. On the other hand, if we identify that a certain business transaction is not or non-accountable, hindi natin siya i-record kasi hindi naman siya accountable. Basta tandaan nyo lang, malalaman natin na accountable ang isang events or it is an accountable event if it affects the assets, liabilities, equity, income, or expenses of the business. Okay, so sir, paano namin ma-identify yun? Meron tayong mga source documents, di ba? So ano ba yung mga example ng source documents na tinitingnan natin? So, meron tayong sales invoice, official receipts, delivery receipts, and the likes. The likes, let's say, cheque, deposit slip, diba? So, those are the source documents na wherein makikita natin ano ba yung mga transaction na nangyari. Okay? So, in accounting or in a business, there are two types of events. So, this event, dito natin makikita kung ano ba yung mga business transactions na yan. So, let's say, for internal event, these events it do not involve an external party. On the other hand naman, external events, these are transactions that involve the business and another external party. So, ano ba yung mga internal and external events na yan? Let's say, for the internal events, these are transactions that involves company lang. Let's say, we consumed our supplies. Nagkaroon tayong supply expense. Internal lang yun kasi sa atin lang siya eh. Walang involved na party. We consume the supplies. Production ng goods natin, tayo lang involved, di ba? So, external naman, let's say, the company sold goods to the customer. So, customer is an external party. Meron ng involved na external party dun sa transactions. Let's say, we, we borrow money from the bank. Bank is an external party. So, it is an external transaction or external event. Malinaw? So, by these events, doon natin ina-identify din, okay, yung mga transactions na i-record natin if an accountable event or not accountable event. Okay? So, madali lang naman malaman para kung ma-identify kung accountable o hindi. As long as it affects these elements of financial statements or the major accounts, doon natin malalaman na accountable event siya. Okay? So, that's the first step. Okay, after we identify all those records that are that could affect our assets, liabilities, and so on, that's the time na magre-record tayo. Okay, so that's the process of journalizing, which is the second step in our accounting cycle. So when we say journalizing, this what I mentioned this as well with our topic on chapter 5 on the book of accounts. So when we say journalizing, it refers to the recording of an identified accountable event in the journal by means of a journal entry. 'Di ba? After natin ma-identify yung accountable event, maire-record na natin 'yan. So, this is a pro forma entry. Okay? So, we have the date, we debit, we credit. Okay? Then there's the short description of the transaction and the posting reference. It's not listed here or it's not shown here, but there should be a posting reference. Okay? If you could remember, the posting reference for the journal entry would come from the chart of account. Then there's a transactional column for the debit and the transaction column for credit. So, this is a pro forma entry for journal entry. So, tandaan, madali lang naman siyang tandaan yung format natin. Okay? So, sa journal entry din, I just want you to know that meron tayong two types of journal entry. We have the single journal entry and the compound journal entry. So, single journal entry, ito yung alam natin, like this one. Debit and one account and credit one account. So, single entry lang. Kumbaga, single account lang yung sa debit, single account lang sa credit. When we say compound journal entry naman, itong debit natin, it could contains more than two accounts. Let's say, we debit cash, we debit accounts receivable, and we credit service revenue. Ano ibig sabihin nyo? Let's say, meron tayong customer, partially nagbayad siya, down payment, then yung the rest receivable. So, papansin natin, let's say may 100,000 tayong nabenta. And then, this customer, nagpay siya ng 20% down payment lang. So, let's say, when nga, 100,000, so, 20% is 20,000. So, ang gagawin natin, 20,000 is cash, yung the rest is receivable. So, our entry would be debit cash, 20,000, and debit accounts receivable, 80,000. Then, credit, let's say, it's a service, it's a service revenue, credit service revenue, 100,000. So, anong makikita nyo doon? Okay? So, by that, you can see that there's a compound entry. Dalawa yung dinebit natin, di ba? So, meaning, sa compound entry, compound journal entry, it contains two or more debits or credits. Okay?